Well, hello, church family. It's been another interesting week. We know that there's a lot of questions swirling around our community regarding businesses reopening, and maybe more specifically for our context, what about churches? I know I've had a number of people call me this week and ask, so we can come back to church on Sunday, right? Well, not so fast. We wanted to give you an update to kind of inform you about where we are in our discernment about the path forward for First Baptist Church of Griffin. First off, let me say that we are so thankful for all of our public officials who answer that call to serve, whether that's in a local setting or in a statewide setting or a national setting. And we know that our officials are making tough decisions each and every day. And regardless of whether you or I personally agree or disagree with these decisions, we know that this is an extremely hard job. And we want our officials to know that we support you, that we are praying for you each and every day. We are thankful for the guidelines that they've sought to provide for us. And while some of the statements this week have suggested that maybe it's possible to just reopen the churches, let me just read to you really quickly from Governor Kemp's guidelines to churches. It says specifically this: online, call-in, or drive-in services remain the best options to mitigate potential exposure to coronavirus. Now look, at the end of the day though, we are responsible for this community. At the end of the day, we are responsible to be true to the values and the commitments that we've made to one another and to God, that we are responsible to pastor this flock in the most responsible way possible. And from the very beginning of this pandemic, we've been guided by the example of Jesus, this example that prioritizes the care of the most vulnerable, this model that we see in Jesus of doing everything to protect those who are on the margins, who are the weakest and most vulnerable. Therefore, after meeting with the ministers, meeting with the deacon officers, after much prayer, we've decided that we are going to maintain the current course that we are on at least through Sunday, May 10th. This means that we will have online-only services for at least the next 3 weeks. Please do not come to the building on Sunday. Instead, please continue worshiping at home for the time being. Now, additionally, that means that our building continues to be effectively closed. This includes events that are held here by outside community organizations and community groups. This includes our gym and our weight room. This includes our weekday program. This includes our church library. They all remain closed at this point until further notice. I want you to know that your church leaders, we've been working really hard on a plan for what church will look like when we are able to return. And let me emphasize, this will not be an immediate return to business as usual. Instead, we're going to gradually ease back into that normal routine by a series of steps. And so I want to lay out for you a few highlights from that plan so that you will know what to expect when the time comes for us to return. When we come back, we will have worship only for the first 4 to 6 weeks. That means there will be no Sunday school, there will be no children's church, there will be no nursery, there will be no extra activities, worship only. We will ask you to come for worship and then go home after worship. Now, because of the need to maintain good social distancing protocol in those worship services, we feel that the sanctuary will be our very best option for a location for that worship. So during those first few weeks, we will meet in the sanctuary. Now, we will also be limiting the attendance of those services to 150 individuals. So as a result, when we come back, we're going to be having 3 Sunday morning services, one at 8:30, one at 9:45, and one at 11. Now, the plan for these 3 services is to be identical in content, maybe similar to what you would think of as like a one church service. And so we're working to put in place some of the best practices that we've discovered from being in conversation with other churches and listening to other officials, ways that we can minimize contact and minimize the spread of disease. So as we get closer to the time when that will actually take place, we'll be a little more specific about what those new procedures are. We will continue to provide options for Sunday school during those first few weeks, but they will have to be accessed from home. And we can work with our Sunday school teachers if you would like to do that via Zoom, as many of our classes are already doing. But the goal for us, as we're figuring out how to do this, is to put together a sign-up so that each family can decide which of those 3 services best fits your schedule, but we will need to limit that attendance for the time being. So we thank you in advance for being flexible and understanding as we kind of navigate these difficult waters. After that time, we'll begin to reintroduce Sunday school. We'll begin to reintroduce nursery, children's church, coffee house, all of those other things that surround our worship service, and we can begin to return to a normal schedule of Sunday morning. Now, please note this. This is not an attempt to make a one church style service our new normal. That's not what we want. We deeply value the distinct styles of our 3 services, and we want to get back to maintaining the stylistic integrity of each of those 3 services. However, we are asking for your patience because we've got to make this in steps, and we've got to figure out the best way, what's in the good of the whole church. And so what's the best way to get back into a normal mode in the safest and smoothest way possible for everyone involved? So please bear with us. With all that said, I do want to explain to you a couple of the factors that will guide our decisions about when to begin this plan of reintroduction. First off, there's guidelines from our health officials. I mean, we're listening to national, state, local officials, as well as the healthcare professionals that are right here in our own church community about where we are in Griffin and in Spalding County with regards to infection rates, with regards to relative safety for gathering back together. But the second factor that we're really having to measure out here is our building maintenance. As many of you know, we are in the middle of some renovation work on the HVAC system. And this started out back in January when we first started talking about this. So we've been in the middle of doing that even while you've been worshiping at home. And the work started before the pandemic took full effect. And before we can resume services in the sanctuary, which we think is our best option, we've got to make sure that that sanctuary is fully suitable for those worship gatherings. You may remember when we approved this repair work, we knew that there would be a couple of weeks when all of the stuff came in that we would need to be out of the sanctuary because they would need to bring in a crane and remove the existing chiller off the roof, replace it with a new chiller, and a number of other logistical things that had to be worked out. Well, this is scheduled to happen at some point in May. Therefore, that needs to be a consideration for us as we decide and make plans to return to in-person worship. Again, our hope is that we can do that as soon as possible, but we're trying to be patient here and waiting on the appropriate time as well. Now, finally, some of you are probably wondering about the church conference on May the 3rd and the logistics that will be surrounding that. So again, your church leaders have been working hard to put together a plan that will make that run as smoothly as possible. We will have an online service, as we have been for the past few weeks. It will be broadcast on cable and on our website. At the very end of that service, Bonnie Brown will call us into church conference. There are 4 items that need our attention and need our action as a church body. We will be sending out a packet of information to you by email this coming Sunday, April 26th, outlining these 4 items that you will be asked to vote on. If you have any questions about any of those, we encourage you to contact the church office during the week. Unlike a usual business meeting, we won't be able to field questions during that business meeting on May the 3rd and respond to them because of the nature of that meeting being, via our broadcast. So if you have questions about it, please contact the church office and make sure you've got those questions answered before May the 3rd. On that date, you'll have 2 options for casting your vote. As soon as the meeting ends, you'll be able to access a digital ballot on the church's website, fbcgriffin.org. You can vote on those 4 items. You can fill it out just by clicking on yes or no or typing in where there's some nominations that are needed, and then hit submit at the end, and it will count your vote. Or we will have members of the pastor search committee answering the phones here at the church for 1 hour after that business meeting. So from 12 o'clock noon until 1 p.m., there will be folks answering the phones here at the church, 770-227-5517. So please, if you want to do that, you can call in and they will walk you through a ballot. They will mark it with your responses and then submit that. So remember, you can either choose to do it online or you can choose to call in your ballot, but you can only do one. You can't do both. Everybody only gets one ballot. But we have confidence that this will be a smooth and effective way of conducting this vote. Not to mention that this vote will definitely be one that'll go down in the history books of First Baptist Church of Griffin, just because I don't know that we've ever had to do anything remotely close to this. I don't know. Maybe we can look back in some of those earlier minutes and see if there's some evidence of that. In summary, let me say this. I know that you're all clamoring to get back to some sense of normal. I assure you, we are too. I know that we long for community, we long for connection, we long for the chance to see our friends and our family again, to pray together, to sing together, to worship together, to break bread together. But I'm going to ask you to be patient. Please, we will get through this. We will return to some semblance of normal in the weeks ahead, but we can't rush it. We need to wait until it's best for all members of our community, for all of us to come together to lift up our hearts in praise. And it will be a glorious day when we can gather back together, even though it will be a little strange and it's not going to feel like normal for a little bit of time, but we will get there. Let's continue to encourage one another. Let's continue to support one another. Let's continue to be the hands and feet of Christ, showing God's love to this community, to our families, to our neighbors, to one another, as we support one another through this unprecedented time. Thank you for your support, and know that we love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.